بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
1 minute, Milana. You're going to get kicked out. We're staying unmuted. Yes, so that you can stretch your hands. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. We'll begin straight away with Qari Zahid and Surat al-Kahf. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا ماكثين فيه أبدا وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم إن يقولون إلا كذبا فلعلك باقع نفسك على آثارهم إن لم يؤمنوا بهذا الحديث أسفا إنا جعلنا ما على الأرض زينة لها لنبلوهم أيهم أحسن عملا وإنا لجاعلون ما عليها صعيدا جرزا أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا إذ أوى الفتية إلى الكهف فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا فضربنا على آذانهم في الكهف سنين عددا ثم بعثناهم لنعلم أي الحزبين يحصى لما لبثوا أمدا نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى وربطنا على قلوبهم إذ قاموا فقالوا ربنا رب السماوات والأرض لن ندعو من دونه إلها لقد قلنا إذا شططا هؤلاء قوم اتخذوا من دونه آلهة لولا يأتون عليهم بسلطان بين فمن نظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا وإذ اعتزلتموهم وما يعبدون إلا الله فأووا إلى الكهف ينشر لكم ربكم من رحمته ويهيئ لكم من أمركم مرفقا وترى الشمس إذا طلعت تزاور عن كهفهم ذات اليمين وإذا غربت تقرضهم ذات الشمال وهم في فجوة منه ذلك من آيات الله من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلا تجد له وليا مرشدا وتحسبهم أيقاظا وهم رقود ونقلبهم ذات اليمين وذات الشمال وكلبهم باسط ذراعيه بالوصيد لو اطلعت عليهم لوليت منهم فرارا ولملئت منهم رعبا وكذلك بعثناهم ليتساءلوا بينهم قال قائل منهم كم لبثتم قالوا لبثنا يوما أو بعض يوم قالوا ربكم أعلم بما لبثتم فابعثوا أحدكم بورقكم هذه إلى المدينة فلينظر أيها أزكى طعاما فليأتكم برزق منه وليتلطف ولا يشعرن بكم أحدا إنهم إن يظهروا عليكم يرجموكم أو يعيدوكم في ملتهم ولن تفلحوا إذا أبدا وكذلك أعثرنا عليهم ليعلموا أن وعد الله حق وأن الساعة لا ريب فيها إذ يتنازعون بينهم أمرهم فقالوا ابنوا عليهم بنيانا ربهم أعلم بهم قال الذين غلبوا على أمرهم لنتخذن عليهم مسجدا سيقولون ثلاثة رابعهم كلبهم ويقولون خمسة سادسهم كلبهم رجما بالغيب ويقولون سبعة وثامنهم كلبهم قل ربي أعلم بعدتهم ما يعلمهم إلا قليل فلا تمار فيهم إلا مراء ظاهرا ولا تستفت فيهم منهم أحدا ولا تقولن لشيء إني فاعل ذلك غدا إلا أن يشاء الله واذكر ربك إذا نسيت وقل عسى أن يهديني ربي لأقرب من هذا رشدا ولبثوا في كهفهم 300 سنين وازدادوا 9 قل الله أعلم بما لبثوا له غيب السماوات والأرض أبصر به وأسمع ما لهم من دونه من ولي ولا يشرك في حكمه أحدا واتل ما أوحي إليك من كتاب ربك لا مبدل لكلماته ولن تجد من دونه ملتحدا واصبر نفسك مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه ولا تعد عيناك عنهم تريد زينة الحياة الدنيا ولا تطع من أغفلنا قلبه عن ذكرنا واتبع هواه وكان أمره فرطا وقل الحق من ربكم فمن شاء فليؤمن ومن شاء فليكفر إنا أعتدنا للظالمين نارا أحاط بهم سرادقها وإن يستغيثوا يغاثوا بماء كالمهل يشفي الوجوه بئس الشراب وساءت مرتفقا إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات إنا لا نضيع أجر من أحسن عملا أولئك لهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتهم الأنهار يحلون فيها من أساور من ذهب ويلبسون ثيابا خضرا من سندس واستبرق متكئين فيها على الأرائك نعم الثواب وحسنت مرتفقا. واضرب لهم مثل الرجلين جعلنا لأحدهما جنتين من أعناب وحففناهما بنخل وجعلنا بينهما زرعا كلتا الجنتين آتت أكلها ولم تظلم منه شيئا وفجرنا خلالهما نهرا وكان له ثمر فقال لصاحبه وهو يحاوره أنا أكثر منك مالا وأعز نفرا ودخل جنته وهو ظالم لنفسه قال ما أظن أن تبيد هذه أبدا وما أظن الساعة قائمة ولئن رددت إلى ربي لأجدن خيرا منها منقلبا قال له صاحبه وهو يحاوره وكفرت بالذي خلقك من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم سواك رجلا لكن هو الله ربي ولا أشرك بربي أحدا ولولا إذ دخلت جنتك قلت ما شاء الله لا قوة إلا بالله إن ترني أنا أقل منك مالا وولدا فعسى ربي أن يؤتيني خيرا من جنتك ويرسل عليها حسبانا من السماء فتصبح صعيدا زلقا أو يصبح ماؤها غورا فلا تستطيع له طلبا وأحيط بثمره فأصبح يقلب كفيه على ما أنفق فيها وهي خاوية على عروشها ويقول يا ليتني لم أشرك بربي أحدا ولم تكن له فئة ينصرونه من دون الله وما كان منتصرا هنالك الولاية لله الحق هو خير ثوابا وخير عقبا واضرب لهم مثل الحياة الدنيا كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض فأصبح هشيما تذروه الرياح وكان الله على كل شيء مقتدرا المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير نملا ويوم نسير الجبال وترى الأرض بارزة وحشرناهم فلم نغادر منهم أحدا وعرضوا على ربك صفا لقد جئتمونا كما خلقناكم أول مرة بل زعمتم أن لن نجعل لكم موعدا ووضع الكتاب فترى المجرمين مشفقين مما فيه ويقولون يا ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحدا. وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس كان من الجن ففسق عن أمر ربه أفتتخذونه وذريته أولياء من دوني وهم لكم عدو بئس للظالمين بدلا. ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا. ويوم يقول نادوا شركائي الذين زعمتم فدعوهم فلم يستجيبوا لهم وجعلنا بينهم موبقا. ورأى المجرمون النار فظنوا أنهم مواقعوها ولم يجدوا عنها مصرفا. ولقد صرفنا في هذا القرآن للناس من كل مثل وكان الإنسان أكثر شيء جدلا. وما منع الناس أن يؤمنوا إذ جاءهم الهدى ويستغفروا ربهم إلا أن تأتيهم سنة الأولين أو يأتيهم العذاب قبلا. وما نرسل المرسلين إلا مبشرين ومنذرين ويجادل الذين كفروا بالباطل ليدحضوا به الحق واتخذوا آياتي وما أنذروا هزوا. ومن نظلم ممن ذكر بآيات ربه فأعرض عنها ونسي ما قدمت يداه إنا جعلنا على قلوبهم أكنة أن يفقهوه وفي آذانهم وقرا وإن تدعهم إلى الهدى فلن يهتدوا إذا أبدا. وربك الغفور ذو الرحمة لو يؤاخذهم بما كسبوا لعجل لهم العذاب بل لهم موعد لن يجدوا من دونه موئلا. وتلك القرى أهلكناهم لما ظلموا وجعلنا لمهلكهم موعدا. وإذ قال موسى لفتاه لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا فلما بلغا مجمع بينهما نسيا حوتهما فاتخذ سبيله في البحر سربا. فلما جاوزا قال لفتاه آتنا غداءنا لقد لقينا من سفرنا هذا نصبا. قال أرأيت إذ أوينا إلى الصخرة فإني نسيت الحوت وما أنسانيه إلا الشيطان أن أذكره واتخذ سبيله في البحر عجبا. قال ذلك ما كنا نبغي فارتد على آثارهما قصصا فوجدا عبدا من عبادنا آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما. قال له موسى هل اتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا قال إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا وكيف تصبر على ما لم تحط به خبرا قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمرا. قال فإن اتبعتني فلا تسألني عن شيء حتى أحدث لك منه ذكرا. فانطلقا حتى إذا ركبا في السفينة خرقها قال أخرقتها لتغرق أهلها لقد جئت شيئا إمرا قال ألم أقل إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا قال لا تؤاخذني بما نسيت ولا ترهقني من أمري عسرا فانطلقا حتى إذا لقيا غلاما فقتله قال أقتلت نفسا زكية بغير نفس لقد جئت شيئا نكرا قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا قال إن سألتك عن شيء بعدها فلا تصاحبني قد بلغت من لدني عذرا فانطلقا حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعما أهلها فأبوا أن يضيفوهما فوجدا فيها جدارا يريد أن ينقض فأقامه قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا قال هذا فراق بيني وبينك سأنبئك بتأويل ما لم تستطع عليه صبرا أما السفينة فكانت لمساكين يعملون في البحر فأردت أن أعيبها وكان وراءهم ملك يأخذ كل سفينة غصبا وأما الغلام فكان أبواه مؤمنين فخشينا أن يرهقهما طغيانا وكفرا فأردنا أن يبدلهما ربهما خيرا منه زكاة وأقرب رحما وأما الجدار فكان لغلامين يتيمين في المدينة وكان تحته كنز لهما وكان أبوهما صالحا فأراد ربك أن يبلغا أشدهما ويستخرجا كنزهما رحمة من ربك وما فعلته عن أمري ذلك تأويل ما لم تسطع عليه صبرا ويسألونك عن ذي القرنين قل سأتلو عليكم منه ذكرا إنا مكنا له في الأرض وآتيناه من كل شيء سببا فأتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة ووجد عندها قوما قلنا يا ذا القرنين إما أن تعذب وإما أن تتخذ فيهم حسنا قال أما من ظلم فسوف نعذبه ثم يرد إلى ربه فيعذبه عذابا نكرا وأما من آمن وعمل صالحا فله جزاء الحسنى وسنقول له من أمرنا يسرا ثم أتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس وجدها تطلع على قوم لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا ثم أتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ بين السدين وجد من دونهما قوما لا يكادون يفقهون قولا قالوا يا ذا القرنين إن يأجوج ومأجوج مفسدون في الأرض فهل نجعل لك خرجا على أن تجعل بيننا وبينهم سدا قال ما مكني فيه ربي خير فأعينوني بقوة أجعل بينكم وبينهم رجما آتوني زبر الحديد حتى إذا ساوى بين الصدفين قال انفخوا حتى إذا جعله نارا قال آتوني يفرغ عليه قطرا فما استطاعوا أن يظهروه وما استطاعوا له نقبا قال هذا رحمة من ربي فإذا جاء وعد ربي جعله دكا وكان وعد ربي حقا وتركنا بعضهم يومئذ يموج في بعض ونفخ في الصور فجمعناهم جمعا وعرضنا جهنم يومئذ للكافرين عرضا الذين كانت أعينهم في غطاء عن ذكري وكانوا لا يستطيعون سمعا أفحسب الذين كفروا أن يتخذوا عبادي من دوني أولياء إنا أعتدنا جهنم للكافرين نزلا قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا أولئك الذين كفروا بآيات ربهم ولقائه فحبطت أعمالهم فلا نقيم لهم يوم القيامة وزنا ذلك جزاؤهم جهنم بما كفروا واتخذوا آياتي ورسلي هزوا إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا قل لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فمن كان يرجو لقاء ربه فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا صدق الله العظيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Today, inshallah, I want to bring up the story of we've always been doing the prophets, but now we have, some others that we need to discuss. We talked about Iblis last night, and today we talk about al-Samiri. Al-Samiri is another person who tends to be on the wrong side of the equation. Now, Samiri's story is very unique. It's extremely interesting. Now, his story is that he was an orphan, and he's not from Bani Israel, according to most scholars. He's actually like from another land. Some people say he's a Persian. And his mother had him, and the father was gone. And she ended up moving to Egypt. But because she was a foreigner, she wasn't really welcomed into Egyptian society. So she ends up being taken up by the Bani Israel. The Bani Israel took her up as one of their own, almost like an act of charity. And it ends up that she ends up in a cave on the way to Egypt and gives birth to this young boy who is called the Samiri. And this young boy, in absolute desperation, that how is she going to feed him? How is she going to survive? Sayyidina Jibreel comes and protects them and feeds the boy and makes sure that the boy has enough food to eat and that he's taken care of. So there's a special touch that this Samiri has. There's something unique charisma he has because of that interaction with Sayyidina Jibreel. Now, what ends up happening? Samiri lives with the Bani Israel. His mother lives with the Bani Israel. When they go across the desert, across the Red Sea, he goes with them and he joins them and he's one of them, even though he's technically not from Bani Israel. Well, there's a unique ayah in the Quran says that حُمِّلُوا, all right, حُمِّلُوا أَوْزَارًا مِّن زِينَةِ الْقَوْمِ, that the Bani Israel, as they were traveling across the Red Sea, lo and behold, they had with them sins, awzar, sins from the adornments of the people. Now, awzar here also means heavy things, right? Heavy things, okay? And so what is that? And what does it have to do with Samiri? What they are is that when the Jews had holiday, when the Bani Israel had holidays, they weren't a wealthy people. They were made slaves. But they had neighbors. They were interacting with the other Egyptians. It's not like they were totally closed off. So they would borrow jewelry from their neighbors, from people that they knew, right? And they would wear them for their holidays. And so they always had some jewelry borrowed from the Egyptians. But when they came time to make the hijrah, to travel across the Red Sea and to leave Egypt, they didn't want to tip off the Egyptians. They didn't want to tip off anybody by saying, everyone all of a sudden here, take your jewelry back. So they ended up leaving with jewelry that wasn't theirs. It was borrowed jewelry. So that's why it's awzar, it's sinful. It's not theirs. So as they crossed, when Sayyidina Musa was at the top of the mountain, receiving the wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told Sayyidina Harun, you rule over the Bani Israel in my absence. Wa aslih, and be righteous and make sure everything is good. Okay? And so Samiri came up with this idea. He said, oh, Bani Israel, we have all this jewelry, okay? All this jewelry that's it's not ours. It's the enemy's. And we have to get rid of it. So I have an idea. Let's all dump it into this pot. So he did. They all threw they threw their jewelry in the pot. In other words, they were happy to get rid of the sinful jewelry, because anything that you have that's not yours is sinful. It's like having fire in your pocket. So he threw it to them and got rid of it. And then Samiri himself placed his jewelry in there. But Samiri, he had a little bit of a skill in terms of molding things, and he molded for them a calf, a golden calf. When the Bani Israel were crossing the Red Sea, they came upon a certain area and they saw a tribe worshiping a god, an image of a god. And they said, Ij'al lana ilahan kama lahum aliha. Oh, Moses, make a statue of a god for us, just as they have a statue. So again, that touch of that pull to imitate the Egyptians was still inside the Bani Israel. They still had this urge to imitate the Egyptians. Then they wanted to copy them and be like them. So there was still something not right up here and in here for the Bani Israel. But Samiri was astray. He was somebody that was misguided. He was not right. And one of the things that he did is that he saw, because of his previous link with Sayyidina Jibreel, he was able to see traces of Jibreel. And when Sayyidina Jibreel was there one day visiting Sayyidina Musa, he saw the hoof, he saw the foot or the hoof of the horse of Jibreel alayhi salam, and he took some of that sand because he knew anything that touched Jibreel or any heavenly body had some special barakah to it. But what did he use it for? Did he use it to like cure people or something? No. He used it and he sprinkled it on the golden calf, right, to give that type of special attraction to the golden calf. And he got the Bani Israel all to worship the golden calf. Well, what does this show you? It shows you that even if people see a miracle right before their very eyes, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be firmly established. Which is why some people say, how could the Muslims have had, any struggle? How could there be sinners amongst the Sahaba? How could there be civil wars amongst the Muslims? Just because you witness a miracle, whether it's Sayyidina Isa, Sayyidina Musa, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it doesn't mean you're not a human being. It doesn't mean shaitan can't talk to you anymore. So even in the presence of these great miracles and these great prophets, people are people. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to do very bad things, despite even being that close to prophethood. So all these Bani Israel, they were, as some people say, still wet. Their clothes were still wet from the Red Sea, and they're worshiping the golden calf. Now let's take a look at the reaction of Harun alayhi salam. What did he do? Sayyidina Musa came down and he found Harun and a few people standing there doing nothing, even though the golden calf is being worshipped and singing and dancing and all sorts of madness. Sayyidina Harun alayhi salam explained himself. We're a small group. The majority of the people went and worshiped the golden calf. If we were to wage war against them, what would have happened? Right? The large group would defeat the small group, and we'd be all doomed, and there would be no believers left. So what did he do? He did what we call ijtihad, which is when you're put in a situation, you have to make a judgment call. And he made the judgment call that he didn't want to further divide Bani Israel, and he didn't want to go into a battle that most likely he could not win because he was far outnumbered by those people who worshiped the golden calf. Now, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam was so upset, so angry, and so distraught after all these years, after all this time against the Fir'aun. And now finally, we have our own land. And the first thing that you do, I'm getting the Torah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Alwah and the revelation is that you all go and worship another God, right? So Allah ta'ala reveals for him what is the punishment of people who apostate and worship a false God like this. It's the punishment of death, right? And the first death penalty is from the law of Moses. But how are they going to do it? Nobody could go and they're all one tribe of relatives. They're going to go and all killing each other, giving death penalty to so-and-so's uncle and so-and-so's dad. Then you see them the next day, and I just killed your dad, and you just killed my son. So Allah Ta'ala ordained that every one of them, except for Moses and Aaron and those who didn't worship the golden calf, are to line up in the middle of the darkness of the night with knives in their hands and opposite sides, and that Musa alayhi salam will raise his arms in dua and ask Allah Ta'ala for forgiveness. But they will all have to go and attack one another. And this is how they purified themselves of that sin. Some people died, some people got injured, until Musa's hands were so tired that he dropped. And as soon as he dropped his hand, then it was over. When Allah permitted the end of that punishment, purification. Now, some people are like, wow, that's really rough. What did you expect? You worshipped a false God after Allah Ta'ala saved you and opened a miracle for you. Do people think that there are no consequences in this world? This is one of the problems of our world today. We're so rich and fat and happy that we have come to expect and be entitled that we can do anything we want without any consequences. There's going to be consequences when you worship a false God. This is the worst sin that a person can do. Okay? And our version today of worshiping a false God is nobody's going to worship an idol. unless maybe they're influenced by some maybe Hinduism. But what people are going to do is they're going to take ideas that are contrary to Islam and superimpose them on Islam and cut off limbs of the Sharia that they don't like. All right, this is not popular today. Let's just cut it off and say it's not part of Islam. This is not popular today with this set of idea. Cut it off. So this is why Allah says, "Udkhulu fi silmi kaffa," which is such an important ayah, which means enter into submission to Allah and His Messenger in all matters, whether you like it or not. Now, you might not like a matter for yourself, but you recognize it's part of the religion. And this is how scholars have interpreted marrying a second wife. Now, would any woman want her husband to take on a second wife? Of course not. But is she going to deny the Quran and the Sunnah and the Prophet, what the Sahaba did? No, of course not either. So what's the middle way? What's middle way is I don't like that for myself. Best example, the Prophet used to love watermelon. He used to love squash. He used to love pumpkin. What if a Muslim doesn't want to eat watermelon? What if he doesn't want to eat squash? Is Sharia forcing him? No, but Sharia says you're not going to say anything bad about squash. You're just going to say, I personally don't eat it. Likewise, a woman will say, I personally am not going to be happy if my husband takes a second wife, and I'm going to put it in the contract. As soon as he does, we're divorced, right? And she has the freedom to do that. So Sharia has given us a middle way. And this is the meaning of his saying in the Quran, "Asa an takrahu shay'an huwa khayrun lakum." You may dislike a thing for yourself, but it's good. So it's on the books of the religion, right? It's something legal, lawful in our faith. Many other things are like this in every century and every culture. There's one or two different things that people in that culture, they don't like, right? So what do we say? We say Allah knows best. He put nothing but goodness in His law, but I personally for myself would not want this for myself. And you're free to do this and not sinful for doing this. All right, let's go now and see if we have any comments or questions on the live chat, because as you know, on Friday, we are able to take a couple minutes of live chat, since usually in the weekdays, even though Maghrib is getting slightly later, Maghrib is going to keep getting later until June 21st. Until June 21st is, if I'm not mistaken, the longest day of the year, meaning daylight. I once said to somebody, the days, I was in Morocco, I said, the days are longer in Morocco than they are in New Jersey. He said, it's barakah, all days are 24 hours. No, what we meant is the daylight hours. The daylight hours is what we're talking about. So if there are any comments or questions, let's check if anyone has anything to say. And if not, we will wrap up and be back today for a pretty busy weekend. Number one, we have a busy weekend in terms of we got, what do we have? We have tonight 7:45, tonight 8:45, youth night. We got tomorrow 2 o'clock, the protest in Newark. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it, but I have a family member who broke a limb that I have to go visit. But my support is with the march and everyone going to the march. And then Sunday, the Safina Society YouTube channel, the orientation about all the classes that are. So remember, June 21st, Safina Society classes. June 29th, the 9 to 12 online kids camp. All right, let's check out any questions that we got here. Bismillah, here we go. All righty, Bismillah. How can we see the guise of evil in things? That's a good question. How do we see evil, the guise of evil in things? And that is very simply by asking if where is the subtlety of evil in action? How do I know the subtlety? Sometimes scholars are debating an issue. Sometimes the community is divided by an issue. If you want to know where Allah Ta'ala and His Messenger stand, they stand with the righteous, the elderly righteous. Go to the elderly righteous amongst our ummah and see, and don't part with what they're upon. Okay, they might not say something's wrong, but they might not do something because it doesn't sit right with them. So when the letter of the law it can go both ways, and when the scholars are going both ways, go to the elderly of the righteous Muslims and follow their heart, because their heart is what is guided by Allah. They are the ones who have years of experience. It's not going to end up well for, even if you're right and they're wrong, because your attitude, Allah will not give you success until you humble yourself to your elders, even when they're wrong, that you will respectfully change course. And has this happened? Of course. There have been times when the elders of communities have maybe not been on the right track. But do we use revolution and all this? No, this is not us. We will respectfully, by honoring them, holding them up. You're the ones who established Islam in our time and our area. Okay, maybe you had some errors. We respect. Okay, we're a people of the elders. Okay, and we'll never change that. And I think that that's going to lead to a lot of cohesiveness going forward for our youth, stability. Okay, because we always have our elders to lean upon. Alhamdulillah, we have our elders to lean upon. So these days, I lean upon Imam Zayd Shakir. I look for him to him for direction. People always say, "Oh, where do we need to look for direction?" No, we don't. Oh, we need to look at our elders. They know best. They live. Tell me, you today, would you entrust a decision? If you had a big decision, would you entrust it to yourself today or yourself 15 years ago? All right. Everyone out there, think, whether you're 30 years old or 50 years old, you have a big decision. Do you want you today or you 15 years ago to make that decision? I guarantee you 100%, everyone will say me today to make that decision. So what are we deriding the elders for when, as people get older, they gain more experience, they gain more wisdom, they gain more intelligence, they gain more knowledge just by virtue of living, staying alive, more experience. Where people, I'll look to Imam Zayd Shakir today. I'll look to Sherman Jackson today. I'll look to a lot. There are a number of elders, and sometimes not so elder, and sometimes very much elder, for direction. Right? What mood are they? How did they see things? All right. And there are elders that I would look to that you don't know about, that aren't household names. What is the ruling on stepchildren who are girls with the stepfather? As soon as a man enters privately, this is with the woman, consummation. Consummation in Sharia, you have to understand, there are sometimes different terms. Sometimes consummation in the English language is meant having sexual intercourse. In Sharia, consummation is that he entered a private dwelling space with the woman. That's it. As soon as he consummates the marriage with the woman, the daughters and the mothers of that woman become mahram to him. He can see them without hijab. He can never marry them, ever. Okay? So he can shake hands with them. All right? So that's the ruling regarding the stepdaughter to the stepfather. If the marriage is consummated, they can never marry, and he could be alone with them. He could, touch them, and he can see them without hijab. Fareh Mahmoud says, will we be accountable for our community's wrongdoing? We may suffer the consequences. We might not be accountable, but we probably will suffer the consequences. So what do I mean by that? If your community is going astray, let's say they start with little things like they stop eating halal. Next thing, they start shaking hands with the girls and the guys. Okay. Next thing, they're mingling constantly. They're listening to music. Next thing, nobody's memorizing Quran. And your family, you don't do any of that stuff. But you don't talk either. If you don't talk, then there is nothing stopping that harm from coming into you. But if you talk and you make your position clear, and you are not happy with this, and you express your dissatisfaction with this, and you don't take part in this, and you're actively cutting yourself from those behaviors. You don't have to cut yourself from the people, from those behaviors, and you never approve of it. And you constantly, repeatedly, over and over, I don't approve of this, we don't believe in this, we believe in that instead. Then by doing those actions, you put a veil between yourself and that community. Either one of two things are going to happen. They'll change, or you'll be removed from that community. Okay? And the world was that. I'm like that guy who got a fly in his mouth, that newscaster. The world was that. Was this a prank? One of the kids? Better not be. So we have to talk as a Muslim community regarding what's happening in the country at large. Okay, the country at large, in terms of sexuality, we're completely against the direction it's going to, and we have to say it over and over. As Muslims, we don't accept this, right? In terms of the wars that are being waged, the foreign policies that are going on, we don't accept this, all right? So we have to repeat it over and over and over. If no one's listening, it's for ourselves and for our children and for our people who are listening to us. If we have no impact, that at least that's the impact. It helps you, okay? If you're driving alone in a car and you see some munkar, you should say astaghfirullah for yourself, that you don't just get used to it. And if you keep doing that, but it can't just be just with the tongue. If it happens, you have to get up and leave. You never sponsor it. You never laugh alongside with it. Yeah, shaking hands and we're all buddies, but I don't do that. No, okay? If you do that, you protect yourself. Even if you're literally living amongst them, you protect yourself. Why do people delay doing righteous deeds? How does one rectify it? People delay because this is one of Shaitan's tricks, is to convince you, oh, hold on, wait, worry about this, worry about that, okay? Make sure, double check, triple check. In fact, when it comes to a deed that is well known, good in the Sharia, the Prophet ﷺ said, Ajjilu, hurry up with it before Shaitan gets to you, okay? If you want to do your recitation for the day, for example, if you want to give charity, for example, the idea comes to your head, do it right away. Don't delay it because Shaitan will get involved in the delay. Why does part of our community repel away from the elders, shirking their advice or not seeking wisdom from them? How do we revive bonds between the younger community and the elders? Well, the first thing I would say is that we're an ummah that imitates, unfortunately. And this whole thing with the elders is something that really developed with Elvis Presley, that rock and roll generation where we want to break off from the elders and we want to go our own way and the youth take over and all that stuff, right? That all started from the 50s and 60s and it grew from there on. Before that, you had a lot of love and respect between elders. People honored their fathers and loved them, right? But in that generation, that's really when I think that it started. And we imitate, okay? And so all of the media and the pop culture that people watch and consume, that it always reflects a mockery of the elders, right? Like dads are always made fun of. The elders are always out of touch, okay? We don't have this in the Muslim community. In theory, we should not have this in Islam, right? At the same time, the elders, it hasn't always been a separation of age, okay? It's been a separation of culture as well. So a lot of times we have people coming over as immigrants and then raising up children who are absorbing a completely different culture, and you really can't blame either side. You can't blame either side for not 100% jiving. Like your jokes are not my jokes. Your food is not my food. Your memories are not my memories, right? Like this may be breaking down and smoothening out in the second and third generations where the, home is the same state, right? Whereas back home, the memories of back home, it's impossible to share that because it's like 5,000 miles away, right? And it's food I don't understand, accents I don't understand, dialects I don't understand, memories I don't understand, a history of that doesn't, not something that touched me. Whereas when parents share the same culture, it's very easy for the father to show his children his past. It's very easy for a mother to show their kids where, what my childhood was like, so that it's a smooth and seamless transition. Also, in our religion, we highly, highly recommend marrying young, and therefore having children young. So you're not like in a wheelchair already when you're having your kids. And so you have to go into a museum to show them about your childhood, right? This is actually a phenomenon that's happening. People having children for the first child at 40, 50. Now, let's say you have your first child at like 27, 25, 30, and you have a number of kids, and your last kid, your last kid when you're already old man, 60 years old. That's not going to be a problem because the older kids can help with the transition. So it's really about when you start having kids, and you should start having kids young so that you can be youthful, and that your childhood is not ages away from their childhood, maybe 20, 30 years, right? So that there can be a way to link those things up. I think this stuff is important. This stuff is not like revelation, but it's important because it's lived life, and lived life requires a smooth transition from generation to generation. And I'm telling you, this is one of the biggest challenges. If we could do two things, number one, if we can observe gender interactions according to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and number two, if we can observe generational interactions according to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we have really warded off the bulk of the fitan and the poisons and the snakes that come from our contemporary pop culture, which to me is nothing other than poison. Okay, it seeks to break between bonds of the family and between elders and their youth, and it seeks to completely confuse people on sexuality and gender, and really just lead them astray and into misguidance. All right, anything else we got going? All right, if we're done for today, then again, announcements again. We are on 7:45 today, community update. 8:45, youth, you got to register so that we can let you into the Zoom meeting. Fatima and Harris will take over, all right? Saturday, 2 o'clock, march at Newark. Saturday, 2 o'clock, Safina Society YouTube channel, orientation for classes. All right, jazakumullahu khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.